Hey, what is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe, host and producer of the Sports Vibe, host and producer of the Dr. Vibe Show, host and producer, do you know what time it is? Co-host and producer of the weekly podcast for a proposal for a White House council on boys and men, and also host and co-producer of the monthly Good Men Project show. This, though, is the Sports Vibe tonight. And wow, what a week of stuff like that's gone on, that's coming up. But Brenden is here to rock and roll this week. And there's so much stuff going on. We could go for about 2 or 3 hours this week. This is like
easily
Super Bowl magnified like a million times, but we're going to start it good. So NBA playoffs. Let's start with the series that are over. I live in Toronto. You're accusing me of being a Raptors fan, which I'm not too much. Like, I actually called it with some people the Raptors would lose in 6. So I know a lot of people are going to just drop me right now from Toronto. But any thoughts on that series?
Disappointing. I think that was kind of the biggest theme from it. Look, I picked the Wizards to win that series much the same way you did, but never did I think that they were going to go in there and sweep them. I mean, they absolutely beat the barn doors off them. And then, especially in Game 4, Toronto quit. I mean, it just looked like they just didn't have any sort of fire at all. And, you know, you get beat like that, especially with all the animosity between the teams. There have been a lot in the media about, you know, what Paul Pierce had said about what Toronto was capable of or what they weren't capable of. It seemed like two evenly matched teams with a lot of help in the backcourt. You had Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan versus John Wall and Bradley Beal. So there was a lot of really, really good stuff that came from that. But in the end, it all those were just storylines, and Washington just proved to be a much better team.
I think the happiest man on the planet after that series was over was Paul Pierce.
Oh, absolutely. He famously was shouting, "I don't want to go through customs again," as he helped drop off Toronto in their games. I think, but you speak of Paul Pierce, his playing at the 4, him playing that stretch 4 position that they've kind of developed for him. That's something that you didn't see a lot from Randy Whitman and the Washington Wizards coaching staff. They played Gortat and Nene pretty heavily together, and so they didn't get a chance to see him. Or Otto Porter has had a couple has had some really, really good minutes and some big games playing that 4 position. Like, they've really kind of opened up what they did on offense, and it's made them a much better team. They've been able to play that 1-4 out, play a lot of high pick and roll. Gortat has been really, really good in the paint or the high post position, passing or shooting the ball. That team kind of looks like it's rallying because Toronto and the Wizards both kind of limped into the playoffs. And so now it looks like the Wizards are maybe finding themselves at the right point. It's hard to tell over the course of 4 games and whether or not that was the Wizards playing extremely well or Toronto just not showing up. But kudos to them for taking care of business and just kind of waiting on what's going to happen in the second round.
You're reading my mind a bit. Do you think Washington has a chance to go more than another round?
Well, their talent has always belied that. It's always been, why isn't this team performing better in terms of the second half of this season? The first half, they came out and they were really taking care of business. They looked like, man, John Wall was leading the league in assists for a little while. They really looked dominant. And then somewhere around New Year's, I don't know what happened. They just kind of lost their way. And I think losing can beget losing at times, especially with a team that doesn't have a ton of experience with winning. And I think that they kind of lucked up on the best thing to happen to them, which was going up against a Toronto team that was also limping into the start of playoffs. They got some confidence back. You're starting to see that. And you know, I talk about Otto Porter, Drew Gooden. Like, they're getting contributions not just from their superstar or their more highly touted players. They're starting to get stuff from that bench too that makes them a lot more dynamic of a team.
Good stuff. Next series, we'll take a look at Let's take a look at the LeBron and the Cavs 4 straight over Boston.
Well, this was to be expected, right? This was 4 or 5 games, depending on who you talk to, but nobody gave the Celtics a chance. It was really a testament to Brad Stevens and that coaching staff, the fact that they were able to kind of rally up. They traded away their 2 best players, in Rajon Rondo and Jeff Green, throughout the year in order to accrue those draft picks and to build up some more salary cap space in the future. This team is obviously completely built for winning in the future, winning in the coming years. But kudos to Brad Stevens and for being able to rally the troops kind of and get this team to the playoffs. This whole series, though, pretty much comes down to what happened in Game 4 in terms of Kelly Olynyk. What I think is just a dirty play and a non-basketball play wrenches Kevin Love's shoulder. It sounds like, for all intents and purposes, Kevin Love is going to be out for the rest of the postseason. There have been, maybe he can come back. They're trying to hold out a sliver of hope, but he's torn his rotator cuff. I mean, torn his labrum. He's got serious issues moving forward. J.R. Smith, he and Jay Crowder get into it at the bottom, and he ends up backhanding Crowder, and Crowder, falls to the floor and sprains his MCL. J.R. Smith is going to be out for 2 games with suspension. Not his first time being suspended in the playoffs for hitting another player. I mean, really, 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 really poor timing for them once you lose Kevin Love. But I don't know. I like the Cavs, and they've got the best player in the world on their team. I just don't think they can win an NBA title without Kevin Love.
Hear you big time on that. Then the other implication, and especially, we'll talk about Chicago in a minute. If they have to play Chicago, they would definitely need Love on deck for those games. Sorry. Exactly,
and that's the thing. They were never in a position where they weren't going to beat Boston. But watching Kevin Love, he had played better throughout the series. He looked like he had finally kind of gotten into his rhythm and found his space on offense. And it looked like this team had really, really kind of put it together perfectly, was playing their best basketball. And then, 48 hours later, this team was completely different. And whomever they play in the next round, those first 2 games, they're going to be missing 2 of their best 5 players. And, that changes things. Even with dynamic players like Kyrie Irving and LeBron James, that changes things. That means Tristan Thompson is going to have to play more minutes. They like to kind of bring him in as a change of pace guy. He's great on the offensive rebounds, gives you a lot of energy, but when you play an energy guy larger minutes, you kind of lose out on some of the spectacular plays that he's going to give you. And then who backs him up? Timothy Mozgov and him playing together isn't the same dynamic as he and Kevin Love playing together. And even when Love was struggling offensively, the offensive efficiency of the team is higher when he's on there because he spaces the floor so well. So that's a completely different team than walked into that Boston Garden Game 4.
Okay, let's also take a look at the Golden State.
Yeah, this was a fun series just because it was like a baptism by fire. You got a chance to see a new star on the rise, and Anthony Davis. Kudos to him for getting this team to the playoffs and that tough Western Conference is really the sole superstar on that squad. Eric Gordon showed a lot of really, really good stuff. He showed up and showed out several times throughout that playoff. New Orleans, really their only drawback, and this has been kind of the refrain with them for a couple of years, is not enough health. They just cannot stay healthy to save their lives. If it's Drew Holiday, if it's Tyreek Evans, if it's Anthony Davis, they just can't seem to Eric Gordon especially put it together for an entire season. They're going to probably want some more help in the backcourt if you're looking forward to what they're going to do in the draft, in the upcoming draft. But this team's got a lot of really, really good stuff. I do want to see Anthony Davis work on his post game a little bit more so he can get some simpler, easier baskets. Sometimes they have to do so many things to get him good looks going towards the basket or something like that. Being able to just go to him in the low post would really, really help that whole entire offense. But a fantastic season for them.
Good stuff. Well, let's take a look at the series that are still going on. Starting off with tonight, the Mavericks and the Rockets.
It's weird, man. Like I really wanted the Mavs. I picked the Mavs to win this series because I was still under the false. I was on the false hope that Rajon Rondo was going to turn back into playoff Rajon Rondo. Turns out that was a terrible, terrible mistake, and I'm sorry. It was just
Rajon's not playing for them anymore. He's not playing for them anymore.
And lo and behold, they come back and they win one. They get up off the mat a little bit. That team really was never the same once they added Rondo. He's a ball-dominant point guard, even more so than normal. And that took away from Monte Ellis's effectiveness as well because he needs the ball in his hands as a two guard in order to do what he does. And now that you're seeing that they got JJ Barea out there, and it works a little bit better with him, not because Barea is better than Rondo, but again, it comes down to spacing. He's a better shooter than Rondo. And suddenly things start to open up. Dirk Nowitzki had a throwback game. He finished with around 16 points, but 8 of those came in the fourth quarter. they looked a little bit more like the offensive efficient team that started the season before the Rondo trade. It's almost a shame that they kind of had too many cooks in the kitchen and ruined the chemistry. They're not going to be able to come back because Houston is still playing extremely well, and they've got even without Patrick Beverly, they've managed to really kind of hold it together. Dwight Howard's addition has obviously meant a lot. Terrence Jones important as well as Josh Smith. So. And you got James Harden, who surprises me every time he touches the court exactly how dominant he can be. So they're going to go on, and they've proven themselves a legitimate team.
Okay, so you're basically saying this will be the last game, should be the last game for the Mavericks tonight.
I think so. I mean, because to me, whenever I think about this series, I'm thinking about what if. What if they don't make that Rondo trade? What if they really just keep their team intact? Because I think Houston wins tonight. If not tonight, then they'll finish it in Game 6. But it's just there was so much good stuff happening there. It might just be an instance of just trying to do too much and really ruining the delicate fabric that was that team.
Good stuff. Well, we also got the Trailblazers and the Grizzlies. They played last night. Trailblazers won at least one game, but I can't see them pushing another game.
Way to get up off the mat, though, for Portland. I mean, that's something you can easily go. Once you go down 3-0, everybody knows no one's ever come back, yada, yada, yada. They have fought and scratched and clawed their way back. And the Grizzlies aren't going to make it easy. The Grizzlies love those long series, and apparently they're hunkering down into another one. And nobody wants to go to a Game 7 if you've been down 3-0 because all the pressure in the world, you feel all of it. And kudos to Portland for getting a real contribution from Myers Leonard and C.J. McCollum, two guys that they drafted. A really good job by their basketball operations department. I mean, they've been able to kind of fight and kind of just stay in it. I think that eventually the Grizzlies closed the door, but it's one of those series that you're kind of keeping a side eye on. Like, is this really about to happen right now? But I think Portland goes ahead and finishes it.
Yeah, I think Grizzlies will be one more game and it should be done. And you were talking about 7-game series. I think we have the next 3 series we're talking about all have the potential to go that way. So let's talk about the Hawks and the Nets. What an interesting series. Like, I think consolation-wise, I think Raptors would be very happy to see the Hawks go down.
Well, yeah, I mean, but remember what I said. This was going to be a very entertaining series. Why? Because the Nets have a puncher's chance with the talent that they have on their team. You got Darren Williams, Joe Johnson, and Brook Lopez, who at one point or another in their careers were considered top 5 players at their position. Atlanta does not have that. And as good as Jeff Teague and Paul Millsap and even Al Horford are, they've never had they've never been in those elite conversations. And so What happens last game? Darren Williams goes off, has 35 points, Brook Lopez 26, and suddenly, hey, he looks like Darren Williams again. I mean, it was kind of inexplicable when he lost it, and maybe it might be inexplicable when he finds it again. And now all of a sudden you're in a 2-2 series with an Atlanta team that had a lot of regular season success, but doesn't have a lot of successful players on that team that have won a lot. But actually, the player that I think that they miss, not the most, but that has changed that team by not being there is Thabo Sefolosha. We all remember he got hurt in that Chris Copeland fracas, perhaps at the hands of the police department. That's still that whole story is going to blow up, and it's going to be huge moving forward as more details come out about it. But just from a basketball point of view, that team isn't quite the same. They don't have that perimeter defense at Thabo. He was only having, I think he averaged something like 5 points and a handful of rebounds, but he was an important guy because he had been to the finals. He had been in a culture which had actually gotten some traction and won some things in the playoffs. They don't have that anymore. And I could easily see this Hawks team kind of looking around that locker room like, well, we're in it now, and we're in it with guys who've played just as much and had as much or more success than we have in the playoffs. So I think that's going to be a fun series just overall. I think it's going 7.
You think it's going 7?
I do. I think the Hawks will finish it out. I mean, this is what you fight and claw for home court advantage for. But I think this is going 7, and I think it's going to finish out a really good series.
And you're picking Hawks.
I'm picking the Hawks.
All right. Here's another strange one: the Bucks and the Bulls. Like, Bulls last night had the opportunity to shut it down against the Bucks, and what do? They come up with a goose egg. They lose, and now we have a really interesting series.
Yeah, I can't really call it. It's weird because the Bulls got kind of out Bulls. That's what's been happening the last two games. And remember, they're in game 3, they have a couple shots to win that game. Things go differently. The Bucks could be up 3-2 and not the Bulls. But I mean, the Bucks are not a very good offensive team, but they're really, really long and they're really athletic and they play really good defense. So in game 4, Chicago turned the ball over. They just continuously turned the ball over, gave the Bucks some transition points and gave them extra possessions, and the Bucks won because when you give a good defensive team easy points and extra possessions, they're going to beat you. And this last game, they cut down on the turnovers a bit, but they still, Michael Carter-Williams, very, very big game, 22, 8, and 9. It's been fun watching that team all year long because there's really no reason this team should be here. Not only did Jabari Parker go down early in the season, their best player on offense, Brenden Knight, they had to trade him away because the guy who had 21 points in last game in their last game, Chris Middleton, he's going to be a free agent soon, and they were worried about having to pay him. So this team has undergone a lot of remakes, and kudos to Jason Kidd, who I know nobody was talking about him for Coach of the Year, but man, nobody had the Bucks going to the playoffs. So and they're fighters. All of them are fighters, and it's fun to see Giannis Antetokounmpo, a guy. I talked about Anthony Davis. He's much further along in his maturation than Giannis is, but it's cool to see guys who are going to be stars in this league, seeing them kind of get thrown into the playoffs and get that test of fire really early in their career. So this is a fun series. Now, the Bulls are still the more talented team, and I'm not under any illusions that the Bucks are going to win this thing. But it's interesting because you watch Derrick Rose's production. It's pretty much up and down considering how much rest they've gotten. I think on a day of rest, he's something like 14 points a game, and on 2 or more, he's 28 points a game. I mean, it's a really large leap. I wouldn't be surprised. To me, I think that moving forward, and this is about more than just, in the rest of this postseason, I'd like to see them kind of change his role to more of a Manu Ginobili role, where he's not necessarily the focal point of that team, where he's not necessarily playing these heavy minutes, where he's a guy that is come in and gives you some dynamic stuff for a limited period of time, but on a bit of a pitch count. I'd like to see that for this team because this Chicago team is so much deeper than normal Bulls teams. You got guys like Tony Snell, in addition to Taj Gibson, like on the bench. Dunleavy, he's been up and down, but he can give you points. This team is a much more offensively talented Bulls team. I think that might hurt them on defense because there's always a sense of, we can score and get it back.
Excellent. You stole my thought process of what you think of Rose's performance through the playoffs so far. It's certainly been uneven, up and down, like the turnovers. Just not characteristic. And then the next game they'll come up and just shoot the lights. So it should be very interesting on the way through.
And there's just a natural bit of rust. I mean, there's also that too. And the fact that he hasn't played competitive, repetitive minutes like this in a really long time. And so the fact that he's kind of having to learn on the fly in the playoffs, not really having a lot of time during the regular season to kind of get it back. I mean, it's good for him that he's gone able to do this. And it's a testament to the fact that Chicago was better, that they got a guy like Jimmy Butler, that they don't have to have Derrick Rose having these ginormous games for them to even be in contest. But I think, yeah, I'd like to see him with a different, maybe slightly reduced role moving forward in his career.
Well, if they get through, they're going to need every ounce to go against Cleveland. But even though Cleveland is a reduced roster, they'll still have to be at their high flying best, especially defensively, to match up with Cleveland.
That's really the shame of losing a Kevin Love and even a J.R. Smith for the first 2 games is the fact that Cleveland, I think, is at full strength, is a better team. But once you start taking away weapons and start taking away options, Chicago's depth, I think, starts to weigh on them. And Chicago has had some success in the playoffs. And, this is how they get over the LeBron James something. Maybe it's not them just getting better. Maybe it's just some ill fortune happening and them taking advantage of a situation, which is, I guess, part of the reason that I was surprised that they didn't finish the Bucks when they had the opportunity, because, you want to face them as quickly as possible because you don't know what's going to happen with Love, especially when they went into that game. They had no idea. They were talking about 2 weeks or something like that. Well, the longer this Bucks series goes, the longer he's got a chance to sit down and kind of recuperate. So absolutely. I'm assuming that we're going to see the Bulls finish this out, but I was assuming we were going to see that last time. So
there you go. Well, let's certainly finish this off with the most contested series out of them all, the Spurs and the Clippers.
Whew. What a series.
And I'm still saying that 3-pointer that Anthony Davis made for New Orleans at the end of the year that beat the Spurs is coming back to haunt them.
How much do they miss home court advantage right now? How much does San Antonio wish the next 2 of the next 3 games were in San Antonio? I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth. That shot for AD not only dropped Oklahoma City off, but changed the course of San Antonio's playoff fate as well. I mean, yeah, it's hard. It's hard to believe because you look at Game 3, and Game 3, San Antonio absolutely dismantled the Clippers. And it looked like, oh, it's the same old Clippers. They're going to get in the playoffs and they're going to, have a great regular season and then nothing. They're just going to lie down on you. And then Game 4, absolutely battled back. And by the way, happy to see Austin Rivers getting buckets. Yeah. I know he's a do-grab, but it was a little rough there for a little while. And even I was starting to root for him. I mean, that was it must have been really, really special for him and for Doc Rivers' father, who's coaching the team. Like, it must be huge for that. I mean, that's a hell of a moment. And I'm very happy that he was able to have that.
Good stuff. What do you feel is going to happen the rest of the way?
Chris Paul, I've had my issues with Chris Paul in terms of there are some times when I'm watching games that I feel like he's too involved with what the referees are or aren't calling, or tries to do a little bit too much. He's got a little John Stockton in his game where it's a little too much on the verge of or past the fact of you're being a dirty player now. And so there's some of that stuff that goes along with him. And there's some times where I feel like he's not as aggressive as his team needs him to be he's such a great scorer that sometimes I think he's too preoccupied with trying to set other people up when he's got a litany of moves and a fantastic shooting stroke. He had 34 points in their last outing. That's really what they need from him. They need a high point scoring. They need a high points total from him, and pretty much consistently, because they're not getting a ton on that bench. I talked about Austin Rivers, and that was a nice story. And Jamal Crawford is he can always put up numbers, but there's not a ton coming off of that bench. When they play really well, when they've got multiple guys doing well off that bench, that team plays much better. As it pertains to the Spurs, I can't bet against them. This to me has the earmarkings of 7 games, and the Clippers are going to fall short in Game 7. It feels that way. I've seen the Clippers fall flat when they really needed to be good too often. So now I'm just not doing it anymore. I'm not betting on them, and I'm not betting against the Spurs. And I'm going to be wrong on these years, but it might not be this year. So I'm gonna just go with the Spurs in 7 because that seems to be how this is going.
All right, good stuff. Well, let's switch on. Thursday of this week, something called NFL Draft. Wow.
Yeah, something I don't know if you heard. I don't know if you heard about this or not, but they're doing that. That's how they're getting players into the league now. They're doing this draft thing.
Yeah, this draft thing where they hype it up for like months and months and basically dominate the airwaves and sports media in North America for it. But question.
Yes.
Where is the more interest? Jameis Winston or Marcus Mariota?
They're so inextricably tied to me. Like it's a yin yang sort of thing. They're natural foils to one another. You have Jameis Winston, who's considered the more cerebral quarterback, who, in terms of his on-field decision making, is leaps ahead of where Mariota is, simply because of the system Mariota was in while he was at Oregon. What Jameis Winston did while he was at Florida State, really taking over that offense, and then you combine that with Mariota being such a fantastic athlete, which is fun now to have the black NFL quarterback conversation, and he's not the athlete in the conversation. That's a fun little dynamic that's played out as well. And then you have the off-field stuff with Jameis, running askew of the law, perhaps, or just being just kind of a miscreant. And Mariota, everybody considered to be a very, very nice, affable guy. Those two storylines have been playing off one another this whole time. But I'm more interested in seeing Winston at the pro level, just to be honest. I'm still kind of not sold on Mariota moving forward. Not saying that he can't make those decisions and can't make those NFL throws. It's just that he hasn't. And for a guy to be the number 2 overall prospect, but you haven't seen what you'll need to see out of him at the next level, that's a little concerning. I think that perhaps what might be going on is you have the best quarterback and the second best quarterback, but that shouldn't necessarily equate to the first pick and the second pick.
What are the odds of Jameis not being picked number 1 in your opinion?
from all indications, the Bucks have made it pretty clear that they're going to go with Jameis. Now, obviously, these teams lie all the time. Like they get paid to lie around this time of year, but I wouldn't think that they would have brought him in or been publicly as supportive as they have been about doing their research and finding out that he's not a bad guy. He's just a guy who's been a bit immature in his youth and was under a national spotlight. That was, that's kind of been their refrain this entire time. I would really be surprised if he weren't taken first. Now, that said, there are a lot of NFL pundits and analysts that say that Mariota is going to be the better quarterback. So it really only takes somebody within the Bucs organization believing that same thing. I just can't. It's hard for me to believe that they will go counter to whatever they've said pretty much for months and months now, though.
Now here's the real hot question: will Mariota go number 2? And if he does, who's he going to go? Well, first of all, if he's going to go number 2, and also another question, who's he going to go to? Because he may not go number 2.
There's been a lot of weird talk really late about, there's some stuff with San Diego that people have been talking about with Phillip Rivers. Maybe they're because he doesn't want to move his family to LA, which the Chargers perhaps might be moving to LA. Now he doesn't want to play anymore for the organization. There's been some stuff with that. There's other teams that might be interested in that number 2 pick and for Mariota. And then there's some people that think that they end up taking Leonard Williams, that they end up going somewhere completely different. I think that that's a lot more of an interesting proposition about what's going to happen at number 2 than number 1. I think Jameis has pretty much been locked in at the number 1 for a while, but I think that what happens after that is really kind of anybody's guess, especially with these rumored trades. And keep this in mind. You have to trade before the actual pick is made. You can only trade you can't trade them as rookies. So any trade that needs to happen needs to go on before the actual pick. So if with the Phillip Rivers thing or any of the other rumor trades out there, they'd have to come in, bring him in for a physical and do all that stuff prior to actually making the trade. Just keep that in the back of your head somewhere.
Any other things you're looking forward to in the draft? And how much are you going to be watching the draft?
I watch the draft a lot, but I don't. It's so many college football players that I'm really kind of, once you get past day 1, and once you get into the 2nd round, 3rd round, 4th round, then I'm just kind of looking for guys that I kind of recognize. Like one of the players that I really really liked, who's kind of consistently fallen since this whole draft stock started, is Brett Hundley. I've watched him pretty seriously from while he was at UCLA. I don't think that he made the leaps and bounds that people projected him to as they saw him as a sophomore playing. And I think that that's hurt him. But I think that he's a legitimate player. He's got really good size, mobile. His accuracy waned, but I always felt that was a testament to his offensive line, which was changing in and out. Another guy that I really like that has somehow fallen to maybe a day 2 guy is TJ Yeldon. He had some fumbling issues at Alabama. And so he kind of fell down in Nick Saban's doghouse to a certain extent. And because they got so many other really, really good running backs there. But I've always felt that he could be something special. Now, whether or not that something special is still a running back, there's part of me that's always felt that maybe use him as a Percy Harvin type of role and just kind of get him into space and let him work because of what he's able to do. But that's another guy that I just feel like if he slips on day 2 and goes to the right sort of organization, they could really get a gem and a value pick.
I'm interested too in another Alabama player, Amari Cooper, to see where he goes, because a number of the pundits say that he is, out of all the first rounders that are going to get picked, he's probably the most ready for the NFL.
Yeah, and there's a lot of really good wide receivers that are going to be taken in 1st and 2nd round. That's probably the deepest position in the draft, especially at the upper echelon part of it, whether it's him or Kevin White, Dorial Green Beckham. Like, there's a lot of really, really good wide receivers that are be had. I think that because I've seen Amari Cooper so often, Alabama's on national TV so frequently, I think that probably plays into my bias for him. I saw Kevin White, but I didn't see him as frequently. And Chris Carter has been raving about this guy for pretty much months and months on end, because he's had a chance to work with him, and he just talks about how much of a gym rat, how highly he works type of preparation he does in the offseason. He's working with actual NFL guys in the offseason and doing a really, really good job. He talks about his footwork being so far advanced. He's really just talking about the smaller things of knowing how to be a wide receiver at the next level and just how naturally it comes to Amari and how hard he works at it. I mean, that's, to me, I think is what pushes it over for him being the number one wide receiver taken in this draft.
Good stuff. Well, final segment of the Sports Vibe. And, of course, Branden's first love, his first love, and the big event coming up this Saturday. We thought that he'd be doing the Kentucky Derby in the afternoon and the Mayweather Pacquiao fight at night, but no, he is going to be staying within the confines of North Carolina to watch the event. So it's still a few days to go. What are your thoughts? And we certainly would like a prediction from you.
Finally, I'm just glad. I'm glad that this fight is finally happening. Like I'm just glad that it's finally getting here. That we're actually getting a chance to see it. From strictly a boxing point of view, the fight makes sense. They talk about styles making fights. You have a guy in Pacquiao who's an aggressive, athletic guy who likes to press the issue. Floyd Mayweather is one of the best defensive counterpunchers we've ever seen. And so just from that particular from that stance, the fight makes sense and it works. Some of the smaller stuff that is probably a good idea to watch for, just how busy Pacquiao is able to be. A lot of guys will come in and they're really busy against other fighters, and you come in and they fight Mayweather and they're not quite as aggressive. And the reason is Floyd keeps them at a distance that he likes. Remember, Floyd's got the arm length advantage over Pacquiao. Keeps them at a distance he likes with a lot of jabs and straights. And he's able to kind of control the distance. If Pacquiao has to stay on the outside and isn't able to put Floyd in corners, put him on the ropes, and kind of make him uncomfortable and get him in some spaces that makes Floyd uncomfortable, Pacquiao's going to be in a lot of trouble. He's going to have to be able to wither some of that, just the jabs and the straights, just to get inside and just to make Mayweather hurt. It's weird because Pacquiao was once described as a really, really big hitter. And that's really not the case anymore. He went through a stretch where he put down Oscar De La Hoya, Miguel Cotto, Ricky Hatton, all in successive fights. And that's really not what he is anymore. It's been a while since his last knockout. So Floyd, it wouldn't surprise me if Floyd actually came in as the bigger puncher in this particular fight. The thing that might give Floyd a little bit more pause is Pacquiao's athleticism. He's a legitimately athletic boxer. And he still has those fast twitch, and he still comes at you at awkward angles in addition to being a southpaw. So that will give anybody trouble, even the guy of Floyd Mayweather's boxing intelligence. That being said, I gotta go with Floyd because it's just hard. I've never seen anybody beat him, so it's hard for me to think that Pacquiao is gonna be. I've at least seen Pacquiao lose a fight. I've never seen Floyd Mayweather lose one. And so while he is the Vegas favorite, he's also my favorite. I think it's going to be a decision. I think it's going to be a good fight, though. I really, really do. I know a lot of people have talked about Pacquiao being over the hill, which is weird because he's the younger fighter, but Floyd has gotten hit a little bit more in his more recent fights, which actually make it more entertaining in the larger scheme of things. If you're not a huge avid boxing fan, he gets touched up a lot more than he has over the course of his career. So I think this is going to be a really, really good fight, and there's definitely going to be a rematch. I'd be shocked if there weren't.
So, is Floyd who you want to win?
Yes, he is who I want to win. I like Floyd, the boxer. He has a lot of other character issues that are displeasing. I get that. But as a boxing fan, as a guy who watches this pretty religiously, it's kind of a spiritual experience to see him dictate a boxing ring and do what he wants to do.
And is it also who you think will win? Is that the same thought process you have?
Yes, it is because I think he's a better boxer. He's actually the bigger fighter. Probably will come in on the night of a bigger fighter. He's the best defensive fighter I've ever seen. So it's hard for me to think that even a guy as capable of offensive fury as Pacquiao is, because he hasn't had that knockout power in a few fights. Suddenly now I think that it's a lot more even, and I think that Floyd's just going to be able to wear him down after a while. Because keep that in mind too. I don't think people ever give Floyd enough credit for just wearing the opposition down. There's a reason that he gets better as the match goes on is because he still feels fresh and still is capable of doing things. And because he's really confounded and made things more difficult on his opposition, in addition to his punches, it's just tiring. It's mentally and physically exhausting fighting him.
What would be the best result for boxing?
I think a good fight, honestly, is way more important than who wins and who loses. Because, like I said, I think there's going to be a rematch regardless. If Pacquiao wins, there's going to be one. If Floyd wins, it's going to be one. As long as it's a good fight, if there is, and not just a technically good fight, because I could watch a technical good fight and be all right with it. But the layperson doesn't get a chance to watch boxing that often. This is a national stage. You're getting, Sports Center and ESPN and pretty much NBC Sports Network. Everybody that has a sports network is in Vegas and they're watching this fight. This is the best opportunity that the sport has of really doing yourself a service and really just putting out a really, really good fight. So long, bloody, back and forth, a sort of something like a Rios Alvarado fight would be nice. You're not going to have those type of fireworks, but because you have incredible boxers, maybe you'll have some just dynamic exchanges. You need that in order to sell this sport because it is dying.
Okay, well, that is it. And let's not put it past Brenden to be out there in Vegas. You never know what's going to happen. I know that he can pull some things out of his sleeves, but we just hope that he enjoys it. And again, this is going to be probably the biggest grossing fight of our time, maybe ever.
Yeah, it's pretty, and that's the other thing, because people are spending so much money on the pay-per-view, this really needs to be a good fight. I can't stress that enough for boxing, because look at what boxing's trying to do. They're trying to get back on primetime TV. They're starting to come on NBC and some of these other channels. They're trying to make themselves more available. If they're able to do that in connection with a really, really good fight that'll have people talking for weeks and weeks and looking forward to a rematch, boxing will have itself something on its hands.
All right. Well, there you go. Another edition of the Sports Vibe. Brenden rocking to the house. We covered NBA playoffs. We covered the NFL draft. We called boxing, Pacquiao, Mayweather. Are you going to be watching it?
I'll be watching all of it.
I know. It was wondering if our audience will be watching, willing to pay out, or will they go to their local establishment to watch it? Something tells me that it's going to be hype, but it's going to have a lot of contesting with the NFL draft, etc. So definitely the next time we come on the Sports Eye, we will have even more to talk about, because the NBA playoffs will still be going on because they take 6 months to complete. Then we've got the aftermath of the NFL draft, and we'll have the aftermath of the boxing match. So there's going to be so much more for us to share with Brenden. Thanks again for stepping up and making some time. If you want to touch base with you, how can they do that?
Easiest way, just at WBHU alum. That's at WBHUALUM on Twitter. You can also catch me from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Sports Shop. Just go to thesportshopradio.com and click listen.
Excellent. Well, it's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of this show, the Dr. Vibe Show. Do you know what time it is? Host of two shows and co-hosts of two shows. The Goodman Project Show, where I'm also co-producing it with Marie Roca Jones, and also weekly podcasts where I'm a co-host and producer for a proposal for a White House Council on Boys and Men. As always, we like to say you're blessed and highly favored. You're a magnet for miracles and you're a solution for someone's problem. God bless, peace to all, keep the faith, and we'll catch you soon on the Sports Vibe.